Sibylle of Saxe-Lauenburg was Margravine of Baden-Baden, born a Duchess of Saxe-Lauenburg. She was the wife of Louis William, Margrave of Baden-Baden, a famous imperial general who was known as the Türkenlouis. She acted as consort of the ruler of Baden-Baden and then regent of Baden-Baden for her son Louis George. Biography. Early life. Franziska Sibylle Augusta was born in 1675 at the Schloss Ratzeburg, the second daughter of Julius Francis, Duke of Saxe-Lauenburg, and his wife Countess Palatine Maria Hedwig Augusta of Sulzbach. In 1676 the family moved to Schlackenworth in Bohemia, where she and her sister spent their youth. Her older sister Anna Maria Francisca of Saxe-Lauenburg was the future Grand Duchess of Tuscany as the wife of Gian Gaston de' Medici, future Grand Duke of Tuscany. When the mother died in 1681, their education was entrusted to Countess Eva Pollock-Senna of Werschwitz. Their education was conducted in the art of court etiquette in conversation, painting and music, deemed the traditional education for a female in the era. She was also taught by her grandfather Christian Augustus, Count Palatine of Sulzbach. As the two sisters were the only surviving children of the Duke and Duchess of Saxe-Lauenburg, they were desirable candidates for marriage due to their inheritance, which they would be entitled to at the father's death in 1689. At her father's death, her sister would become the Duchess of Saxe-Lauenburg in her own right and would pass the duchy to her children. The father was apparently poisoned according to court gossip, the culprit allegedly Countess Werschwitz. With his death, the Lauenburg line of the House of Ascania was extinct in the male line. However, female succession was possible by the Saxe-Lauenburgian laws, so the legal female heir to the throne, Duchess Anna Maria Francisca, and her sister Sibylle of Saxe-Lauenburg fought for the succession of the former, the elder of them. Also Julius Francis's cousin Eleanor Charlotte of Saxe-Lauenburg Franzargen claimed the succession. The weakness was abused by Duke George William of the neighboring Brunswick-Lunenburgian Principality of Lunenburg-Selle, who invaded Saxe-Lauenburg with his troops, thus inhibiting Anna Maria's ascension as Duchess Regent. Also other monarchies claimed the succession, evoking a conflict further involving the neighboring duchies of Mecklenburg-Schwerin and of Danish Holstein, as well as the 5 Ascanian-ruled principalities of Anhalt. The Electorate of Saxony, which had succeeded the Saxe-Wittenbergian Ascanians in 1422, Sweden and Brandenburg. The conflict was finally settled on 9 October 1693, definitely ousting the dispossessed Anna Maria and her sister. Both sisters never gave up the claim. Emperor Leopold I rejected Selle's succession and thus retained the Saxe-Lauenburgian exclave of Hadeland, which was out of Selle's reach, in his custody. Only in 1728 his son Emperor Charles VI infoft George II Augustus with Saxe-Lauenburg, finally legitimizing the de facto takeover by his grandfather in 1689 and 1693. In 1731 George II Augustus also gained Hadeland from Imperial custody. Marriage. Sibylle was due to marry Prince Eugene of Savoy but preferred the other candidate, the older and impoverished Margrave of Baden-Baden, who had lost practically everything due to the war with France. Sibylle was engaged to Louis William, Margrave of Baden-Baden, some 20 years older than she and childless. He was also known as Turkish Louis due to his famous exploits against the Ottomans and his efforts against Louis XIV in the field and as part of the Imperial army. As a result, Louis William traveled to meet his young bride in Bohemia, Margravine of Baden-Baden. He arrived in Bohemia on 10 January 1690. The couple were officially betrothed on the 14th of January and the actual marriage occurred on the 27th of March 1690. Sibylle aged 15. The couple were supposed to be married at the Schloss Raudnitz, the main residence of the Margrave, but that had been destroyed by the French. As a result, the newlyweds stayed in Ostrov. Although a reigning prince, Louis of Baden-Baden was a retired general 20 years older than Sibylle August. The emperor had deemed that her sister marry Prince Eugene of Savoy again due to his service in the name of the emperor. As such, she married Philip Wilhelm of the Palatinate, son of Philip William Elector Palatine and Elizabeth Amalia of Hesse-Darmstadt. When Philip Wilhelm died in 1693, she married again to Gian Gaston de' Medici, Grand Prince of Tuscany and son of Cosimo III de' Medici, Grand Duke of Tuscany, and Marguerite Louise d'Orléans. Shortly after his marriage to Sibylle was the Margrave Louis William, however, was again engaged in the war against the Ottomans. In the Battle of Slankamen was his greatest triumph and took place in 1691. The exchange of letters between the young Sibylle and her husband have since been lost, but Sibylle had a close relationship with her grandfather, the Christian August, Count Palatine of Sulzbach. For these letters it is obvious that Christian August adored his youngest granddaughter. In the early years of the marriage, Sibylle was often separated from her husband and had plenty of time to cultivate her personal interests, but soon she began to worry about the management of the property, an experience from which they drew much benefit later. She wanted her future husband and moved to the cider with him from camp to camp, but this is very detrimental to the health. The couple had 9 children in all, but were destined to see most of them die in childhood. With regards to her children, Sibylle was nicknamed the Unlucky. Her first pregnancy ended in miscarriage. The first child lived for 6 months, the second for 4 years, the third for 6 years, the fourth for 3 years, the fifth died after 4 months. Of the couple's 9 children, only 3 reached the 10th year of life, 2 sons and a daughter. Of the 2 sons, one was childless and the other had only one daughter, who in turn was childless. Sibylle's only surviving progeny through her daughter Johanna, who married Louis d'Orléans, grandson of Louis XIV. Through Johanna, Sibylle was the great-grandmother of Louis Philippe, King of the French and ancestress of many modern royals. The daughter died in childbirth at age 22, leaving sons were 53 and 65 years old. Miscarriage. Leopold William, hereditary Prince of Baden-Baden. Charlotte. Charles Joseph, hereditary Prince of Baden-Baden, died in infancy. Wilhelmine, died in infancy. Louise, died in childhood. Louis George Simpert, Margrave of Baden-Baden, married firstly Maria Anna of Schwarzenberg and secondly with Maria Anna of Bavaria, and had issue one surviving daughter. William George Simpert, died in childhood. Auguste Marie Johanna, married Louis d'Orléans, Duke of Orléans, and had issue one surviving son. She was an ancestor of Louis Philippe, King of France. Augustus George Simpert, Margrave of Baden-Baden, married Marie Victoire d'Arenberg. No issue. When her second son Charles Joseph, hereditary Prince of Baden-Baden, died in 1703, she made a first pilgrimage to Maria Einsiedeln. It was followed by another 7 pilgrimages. Regent her husband Louis William, died in January 1707 aged 51 of a war injury. He was succeeded by their eldest surviving son Louis George, who had been hereditary Prince of Baden-Baden since his birth in 1702. Louis George was aged 5 and as such, Sibylle was created the regent of Baden-Baden in the name of her son. Sibylle's has been credited with the reconstruction of Baden-Baden, a state which had been ravaged greatly by the French during the various wars prior to Louis George's birth. Sibylle held a tight rein on the state's finances, and by the time of Louis George's majority in 1727, the state was once again flourishing, and she had considerably augmented his own personal fortune. Whenever she could, she made pilgrimages to the next secular advisers, such as Leopold, Duke of Lorraine, and the Elector Johann Wilhelm, Elector Palatine. She also sought spiritual support too. During her regency, she helped reconstruct as well as create many new splendid buildings, including palaces, villas, as well as places of worship. With the Treaty of Rastatt in 1714, she built the Einsiedeln Chapel in Rastatt in gratitude. Louis George reached his majority on the 22nd of October 1727 at the age of 25. Sibylle thus retired from state administration to the Schloss Ettlingen in Ettlingen. In her dowager years, she also carried out various improvements which were finished in the year of her death in 1733. As her only daughter was still unmarried in 1723, it was Sibylle tried to find a suitable candidate for her only daughter, known as Johanna. Her mother proposed two candidates, Prince Alexander Ferdinand of Thurn and Taxis, son and heir of Anselm Franz of Thurn and Taxis, a wealthy German noble of the powerful Thurn und Taxis family and the Postmaster General of the Holy Roman Empire. The second was a French nobleman, Louis Orléans, Duke of Orléans. Her mother preferred the French match as it would strengthen ties with a powerful neighbor who, prior to Johanna's birth, had ravaged Baden-Baden. Johanna, however, preferred the German match due to her roots. Johanna, however, gave in to her mother and agreed to the match with Louis d'Orléans, and there was a proxy ceremony held at the Schloss Rastatt before she was married on the 13th of July 1724. Louis d'Orléans, the grandson of Louis XIV of France, chosen for, among other reasons, her family's Catholic beliefs, she brought a comparatively small dowry of 80,000 livres to the House of Orléans. Later years, having retired, she made various pilgrimages, and under the influence of the Cardinal Damien Hugo Philip von Schönborn, she led a very religious life and visited various monasteries. Sibylle, born a Duchess of Saxe-Lauenburg, Margravine of Baden-Baden and regent of Baden-Baden, died at the Schloss Ettlingen on the 10th of July 1733 at the age of 58. As instructed in her will, she was buried at the Schloss Rastatt with little pomp. Architectural legacy. Sibylle had an active interest in architecture as well as property management. While living in Austria with her husband in the first years of the marriage, the two carried out improvements to the Weisses Schloss. The chosen architect was Johann Michael Sock. Sibylle's most significant legacy was the Schloss Rastatt, which became the main residence of the rulers of Baden-Baden when Rastatt got promoted to city status in 1700. The residence in Rastatt is the oldest Baroque residence in the German Upper Rhine area and was built according to the example of the French palaces of Versailles. She also carried out various other projects. 1707, renovations begin at the Schloss Rastatt. 1710, construction on the Schloss Favorite begins. 1713, construction on the Valentin Church, Karlsruhe begins. 1714, reconstruction in Rastatt begins. 1715, construction on the Einsiedeln Chapel begins. 1717, construction on the Home Office, Offenburg begins. 1717, construction on the Fremersberg Hunting Lodge begins. 1718, Hermitage Museum in the park of Schloss Favorite is built. 1719, Holy Cross Church in Rastatt is built. 1721, Loretto Kapelle is built. 1721, extension of the Jagdschloss Scheibenhardt in Bülich. 1722. Pagodenburg is built in the gardens of Rastatt. 1723. Exentions on the Schloss Bruxelles. 1724. Hermitage in Waghäusel is built. 1724. Redesigning of the Schloss Kislau. 1724. Various projects at Scheibenhardt. 1728. Expansion of the Schloss Ettlingen. 1731. Chapel in the Schloss Ettlinge. 1730. Reconstruction of the nave of the Church of St. Martin in Ettlingen. Ancestry, titles, styles, honors and arms. Titles and styles. The 21st of January 1675 to 27 March 1690. Her Serene Highness Duchess Sibylle of Saxe-Lauenburg. The 27th of March 1690 to 4 January 1707. Her Serene Highness the Margravine of Baden-Baden. The 4th of January 1707 to 22 October 1727. Her Serene Highness the Regent of Baden-Baden. The 22nd of October 1727 to 10 July 1733. Her Serene Highness the Dowager Margravine of Baden-Baden.